Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, I know IT better than IT. Management lies. Tapes don't, part 3 of the How I Left My Last Job saga. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I know IT better than IT. So a few years back, I was working in a manufacturing company as IT manager. Like many industries, we had a number of machines with embedded computer systems. For the sake of convenience, we called these production machines because they produce stuff. By and large, these PCs are just normal desktop PCs that have a bunch of data acquisition cards in them connected to a PLC, or a second network card connected to an Ethernet-capable PLC. Invariably, these PCs are purchased and configured when this production machine is being commissioned, and then just left as is until the production machine is retired. In some cases, this can be as long as 20 years. Please bear in mind that this is 20 years inside a dusty, hot factory environment. I've been in manufacturing environments before, and this concept is not new to me. Thanks to a number of poignant lessons in the past, I make it my business to understand these PCs inside and out. I like to keep them on a tight refresh cycle, or when it's not practical, in the case of archaic hardware or software, keep as many spares as possible. Also, regular backups are important. You just have to understand that unlike a normal PC, it can be difficult to do and plan it well in advance. More often than not, these PCs aren't IT's responsibility, they fall under engineering or facilities. Even so, these guys understand that IT runs just about every other PC in the business, and welcome any advice or assistance that IT can provide. Finally, these PCs are usually tightly integrated into a production machine, and failure of the PC means the machine stops. And so we have today's stars. Airzone, me, the new IT manager. Too expensive, the site's facilities manager. He's in charge of the maintenance of the site, including all of these production machines. He's super paranoid about people trying to take his job, so he guards all his responsibilities jealously, and doesn't communicate anything lest they get the drop on his efforts. Oh, and he has a fixation about not spending company money, even to the point of shafting the lawn mowing guy out of a few hours' pay, hence the name. VPO, Vice President of Operations. The factory boss. No nonsense sort of guy. Old boy, we'll get to him, but his name is derived from being a man in his 70s. I'm new, but in my first few weeks I've already had a number of run-ins with too expensive. I'm a fairly relaxed guy, but I have no qualms about letting someone dig their own grave and fall into it, and in the case of too expensive, I'd be happy to lend him my shovel. My pet hate was when organizing new network drops. I will always run a double when we needed a single. We're paying working at heights money already, and a double drop is material cost only. I.e. adding $50 to $100 material on a $4,000 single drop cost. He'd invariably countermand all my orders and insist on singles. And then a few weeks/months later, I'd have the Sparky in again to install the second drop at another $4,000. And then there was the time that he was getting shirty, because I was holding up a project of his. Well, sorry, if you are running a project that requires 12 to 16 network ports, you'd better at least talk to the IT guys prior to the day of installation. Not only will you not have drops, you won't have switch ports. And if you didn't budget for them, or advise far enough in advance that I could, then you can wait until I get around to it. Failure to plan is not an emergency. So you could see that we didn't exactly gel together well. Which brings us to these production machines, and the PCs nested within. Every attempt for me to try and document, or even understand them, was shut down by too expensive. Me, hardware and software specifications. Too expensive, that's my job, get lost. Me, startup and shutdown procedures. Too expensive, that's my job, get lost. Me, backup. Too expensive, that's my job, get lost. Me, emergency contacts? Too expensive, that's my job, get lost. You get the picture. It resulted in a strong and terse email from Too Expensive to Leave It Alone. He had all the documentation, contacts, backups, and didn't need, or want my meddling, and I was not to touch any production machine's PC under any circumstance. Move forward a few months and I'm helping one of the factory workers on their area's shared PC. It's located right next to one of these production machines. It's old. The machine itself was nearly an antique, but the control system had been recently upgraded. It had coax network of two PCs, one NT4 primary domain controller, and a NT4 workstation, and a network PLC, also on coax. The machines were Pentiums running the minimum specs for NT4 to run, with a control application whose application logic was configured entirely through a proprietary database. I had actually seen this software in a different company, so I had some basic familiarity with it. The coax was terminated on a hub with a few Cat5 ports on it to connect to our LAN, and an old HP LaserJet printer. These particular production machines are rare, only a few of them exist in the world. We bought this one from a company that had gone out of business a few years earlier. It was test and tag day and Too Expensive was running around a Sparky to do the testing. My earlier instruction to the Sparky was to not disconnect any computer equipment if it was not powered off. And so it came time to test this production machine's PC. The Sparky wasn't going to touch it while it was on. Luckily Too Expensive came prepared with his thoroughly documented shutdown procedure: yank the power cords. The test passed, new labels were applied to the power cord, he plugged it back in and turned it back on, then ran off to his next conquest without waiting for the boot to finish. 10 minutes later, the machine operator starts grumbling. I have a quick peek, and see that the control software had started, but the screen was garbled and none of the right measurements were showing. Too Expensive is called over, and he talked one look, pales, and then runs off. 10 minutes later, the operator looks at me and asks for help. I call Too Expensive's mobile, and it's off. I called VPO's mobile and suggest that he comes over immediately. 10 minutes later, the operator, VPO, and I are looking at this machine. It's F*KED. There's the better part of $1 million worth of product to be processed by this machine, and the nearest alternate machine is in Singapore, belonging to a different company. And if the processing isn't done within soon, the product will expire and be scrapped. 40% of revenue is from product processed by this machine. We're F*KED. 10 minutes later, we still can't get onto Too Expensive. We can't talk to him about the backups or any emergency contacts that he knows about. We can't even get his phone to ring. So as I have said, I have used this software before, and have a basic understanding. I know enough that the configuration is everything, and configuration is matched to the machine. But I also knew a guy who did some of the implementations. A call to him gave me a lead, and I followed the leads until about 4 calls later, I had the guy who implemented this particular machine. Old boy had retired 10 years earlier, but VPO had persuaded him to come out of retirement for an eye-watering sum of money. A few hours later, old boy took one look at the machine and confirmed that the database was F*KED. We'd need to restore it from backup. Too Expensive is still not contactable. Me, let's assume for a moment that there is no backup. What do we need to do? Old boy, normally I'd say pray, but you must have done that already because I haven't kicked the bucket yet. To cut a long story short, we had to rebuild the database. But not from scratch. Old boy's MO was when setting up a machine, when he was done, he'd create and store a backup database on the machine. The only issue was that 20 years of machine updates needed to be worked out. It also just so happens that through sheer effort, I am able to compare a corrupted database file to a good one, and fool with it enough to get it to load in the configuration editor. It's still mangled, but we are able to use that as a reference to build the lost config. All up, it took 4 days to bring this machine back online. But we did. To be honest, I certainly wasn't capable of doing this solo, and without my efforts to patch the corrupted database file, Old Boy would not have been able to restore 20 years of patches that we had no documentation for. And what of Too Expensive? After Old Boy and I started working on the problem, he showed up again. He ignored any advice about a backup, because obviously there wasn't any, and instead demanded regular status updates for him to report to VPO. The little sh*t had screwed up the machine, run off to hide, and now a solution was in progress, was trying to claim the credit. When it was all running again, Old Boy debriefed VPO on the solution. I then had my turn with VPO. VPO, so Airzone. Thanks for your help. Your efforts have **ked us. Me, no worries. VPO, and now we get to the unpleasant bit. Too Expensive claims that you didn't follow procedure when shutting down the machine, causing it to crash. He also claims that you hadn't taken any backups, and it was effectively your fault. Me, and when we tried to call him? VPO, he claims he was busy contacting his emergency contacts. Me, I see. VPO, I don't believe a word of that shit. Unfortunately, it's your word versus his. If I had the evidence, I'd fire him. Me, opening the email Too Expensive had sent me about meddling on my phone, you mean this evidence? Half an hour later, I got the call to lock Too Expensive's account and disabled his access card. Management lies. Tapes don't, Part 3 of the How I Left My Last Job saga. When someone screws you over, you plot revenge. When someone fundamentally alters your life maliciously, you plot vengeance. When you get to my venerable age, sometimes you realize that their own actions are going to lead to their own downfall. Tuxedo Jack and Craptacularly Significant Productions. Present. Management lies. Tapes don't. This is part 3 of the saga of how I left my previous employer, whom I just hit a year with as of last week, and not only did I pass 100k comment karma this week, but this is getting posted on my 9th cake day, October 10, 2021. Parts 1 and 2 are available as well. Sorry it took so long to post. Life, etc., lawyers, and Texas politics are interesting. Plus side, I've been advised that I'm not legally required to sign the Election Ethics Code. A quick refresher, Texas is a one-party state for audio recording. Well, I thought as I went over the transcript provided by the recording software. That's for that then. I leaned forward in my chair in my home office, pouring a generous 2 fingers of some rather nice Christmas whiskey that the wife had purchased for me, and then leaned back, sipping at it as I pondered. I knew at this point, there was no way in hell that they were going to give me anything I was asking for, despite having, verifiably, saved them at least 3 times my annual salary in under a year, with the potential to quintuple that if it got rolled out to the other 5 branch offices, especially Atlanta and Denver. This, of course, wouldn't have stood under previous management. The original owner would have said, "Jack, that's pretty damn good, here's a nice chunk of change," especially since the original incarnation of the imaging system I rolled out back in 2014 was the biggest reason they still had a contract with one of the biggest, most recognizable religious educational institutions in the Austin area. Meanwhile, on average, the Tier 1/hardware techs in Austin and Dallas were re-imaging about 10 boxes on a daily basis, each of which had enough automation to save about 2 or 3 hours of touch time per tech, and reduced procedural errors by a ridiculous amount, making even the most user-brained Tier 1 look competent. But the original owner had ascended to the parent company with a seat on its board, and the hedge fund that owned that company was, well, a bog-standard hedge fund. They valued profits more than anything else, and they didn't give a damn about rewarding employees who actually did the work. The parent company cared that the companies it owned under the brand's umbrella were profitable, and as long as management showed that, they gave them free rein. My options are pretty limited, I ruminated, swirling my whiskey in the glass. I haven't got 3 months of cushioning available, and the wife is finishing up her certification program and internship, so flipping them the bird is right out for now. The current management would definitely try to enforce my non-compete, but it's been laughed out of court before for other employees, and 50 miles would mean I'd have to move, which is also right out. I took a healthy swig, then continued, but out loud. I don't intend to poach any clients, and I'm not going to break any non-disclosure agreements or be a complete d*bag. Screw it. I'm going to talk to Cockwomble one more time when I'm in the office next. I was pretty pissed at him at this point, but for another reason. The last of the coworkers whom I'd formed the elite team with had quit, and Cockwomble decided to move the Tier 3 tech/sysadmins, of which there were 4. This will be important later, so remember that, to my old team's area. But wait, Jack, didn't he take away that nice room with doors that you all could close so you could concentrate on your work? Why, yes, he did. He had moved us out directly across from the kitchen, so not only did we hear everyone talking, enjoying it up in the kitchen along with all the smells associated with it, but he put us in the same area that the purchasing team and cabling crews used, so we had absolutely insane foot traffic passing us regularly, as well as shoulder surfers and Tier 1/2s who would come over to us for help with their tickets instead of asking over Teams for assistance. Of course, he demanded that we all start using headsets for everything, which had the side problem of blocking out us hearing when people walked up behind us. Now, I'm a survivor of some pretty horrific stuff. It's most definitely NSFW, so I'll leave it to your horrified and possibly surprised imagination as to just what I went through, and as a result, I have some very well-developed self-defense instincts. Pro tip: don't sneak up on someone like me when I'm zoned in and working and not expect me to do my best Helga Pataki impression out of surprise and fear. It was very quickly changed so that I didn't have to worry about having someone sneak up on me, since my back was to a wall after that, and in a corner seat. However, the rest of the changes, well, they were troubling, to say the least. The next day, I finished up everything I'd been working on, then packed up my laptop case and grabbed my to-go mug. Texas in spring was just cool enough that I could drive the whole way home with the windows down, listening to All Things Considered, and finish a 32-ounce black coffee just as I got to the driveway, unless someone wrecked on Pennybacker Bridge or traffic was well and truly screwed, then locked my machine and got up, shutting off the lamp next to me on the mini fridge as I did so. Walking over towards $COCKWOMBLE's office, I flipped on the recorder app again, then paused by the door for a second. Like, if somebody walked in my office right now, and he was saying that he wants to leave since he's underpaid, but wanted to give us the chance to make it up. Well, we're working on getting temp services through $staffing_firm. I'd just tell $HR_Dalek to add another one to the list, and instead of hiring 3 temps, we'd get a 4th too. You know what I mean? At that point, the hope that I had that he would negotiate with me faded to almost nothing, and all I could see was a cold, clear rage. I resolved that when I got home, I was going to talk with some coworkers and see what they thought. I waited about 30 seconds, grateful the lights were off and the walls next to me were non-reflective, then knocked on the wall next to his office door. Got a minute, Cockwomble? I wanted to see if you all would consider non-monetary compensation, or quality of life improvements, in lieu of a raise. What did you have in mind, Jack? He said, not knowing that I'd heard the tail end of his conversation. More PTO. Jack, you've been here almost 7 years. You get 6 weeks of PTO a year. And it only matters if you either let me take it, and because I know our client base across all regions inside and out, I very often do not get my requests approved, or if you pay it out. I'll continue. He shut up, and I kept going. Telecommuting, reduced work hours, exemption from the on-call rotation, and on that one, by the way, that's almost criminal. A total of $100 for 48 hours of waiting to engage with a 15-minute response to any ticket or call that comes in, no exceptions for time or severity. Yeah, no. His face went dark. No one is going to get telecommuting back. Joe hates it and wants everyone in for FaceTime. I don't really like it either. I want to know everyone's working at all times. You may have been effective, but we had others who weren't, so we have to have a blanket policy for it. That's ridiculous. I did it just fine for a year and a half, and it's only under the current regime that it's become verboten. It's policy. Oh, and no one is getting exempted from on-call, period. We can't afford to increase the on-call pay right now, and it's going to be treated as a bonus. Which means it's going to keep being taxed at 33%, I cynically thought. And we need every senior tech in the rotation too, so you can't get out of it. And of course, new hires are going to be hired on at what I'm currently making. Wait, what? What are you talking about? Oh, don't feed me that. You know that Andy, Will, and Chris were hired on at what I make or more. If you're going to pay me less than new hires, I would expect that you make up for it in perks. He shrugged. We can't do non-monetary perks, and we hire people at rates commensurate with their professional experience and skill set. I snorted. Clearly, the posts on Glassdoor and Indeed stating that the Tier 3 salary range starts at what I earn without the overtime and on-call back that up. $Cockwomble plowed on, oblivious. $HR_junior_ took that ad down. I'm surprised anyone saw it. About your other item, well, we probably won't make up for the lack of raises with things that don't cost money. That's not a traditional practice. It is, however, definitely a viable cost-feasible means to get around budgetary restrictions. I don't think so. If I was to tell someone, hey, I'm not going to get anyone an annual raise this year, but you can all work, but you need the cost of living raise. Right, because let's face it, in this city, the cost of living is insane. But, he cut back in, you can't have the best of both worlds. You can't be, like, okay, you need to get a salary increase in perks or benefits that are not at the company now. You see? I'm saying so, as an award we've chosen to give a compensation increase versus perk increases. You're not giving us either of them, so that's irrelevant, and you only pay out 40 hours of PTO on exit. It's company policy. We had some employees, like $Tier_2, who left, then called in sick his last week, and we just marked him unrehirable. I shrugged. It's a D**CK move. If you're going to quit, do it ethically and properly, and wind up or pass off all your projects. Anything else is unprofessional. Cockwomble missed the very clear shot. I think it would be more like. So, I'll give you a good example. If I had a hiring agent call me and be like, what's going on? I'm probably not going to tell him anything, because I can't because of liability. Me, personally? That's a whole nother story. To an extent, just interference is a thing. If, I'll give you the example. I can just be like. He sat for a second and pondered before continuing. So I can tell you this. I could be like, I wouldn't hire them again. I can say that. It's no violation, as long as you don't go into specifics. A smarmy smirk wormed its way across his face. And technically, if they're a back channel, if it's not formal, if I know the person, oh yeah. If it's a back channel, anything goes. Twisted Nerve was playing on loop in the mental instance of Winamp I had running. We were talking about adjusting your compensation to bring you in line with the new hires, but I can't tell you anything else about that, since every time I do it comes back to bite me in the ass when the directors find out. We were considering moving you to onboarding, since you're so detail-oriented. I would rather stick sporks under my eyeballs and apply 12 pounds of pressure. But I figured that wasn't your thing, and I'm not going to talk about anything else, since every time I tell you something it bites me in the ass later. You have no clue how true that's going to be, I thought as I nodded goodnight and walked out to my car for the hour-long drive home, not tapping the stop button on the recording until I was out of the parking lot so as to remain undetected. Yes, it's another cliffhanger. I'd apologize, but we all know I don't mean it. In the meantime, take a look at the archives. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.